The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. And very sorry for the break. We had a couple of technical issues, but we're going to kick this off now. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome back. If you have been with us for the last installments of this series, my name is Stefan, and I have the honor to host three of the most knowledgeable people in this company talking about how to use commerce and marketing and service together to create one integrated experience. So real quick, I wanted to thank all of you for joining us today. Investing time into learning Salesforce. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to watch this webinar. And let me tell you, we will try very hard to make this the best hour in the day for you. And before we dive into the content, let me introduce you to our fantastic speakers for the whole series. So we're going to have Mihir Panchal up, who leads our Salesforce cross-cloud practice, but is also a well-known ambassador to our customers and internal success team. We're going to have Abram Lloyd, long-standing Commerce Cloud veteran and thought leader in the company. Derek Ellis is going to be presenting today, who's actually the product expert when it comes to Marketing Cloud Connect. We also have Sanjay Bansal, who's responsible for global cross-cloud alliances. If you are a Salesforce partner, you must definitely get connected with Sanjay. He's going to be responsible for rolling out all this cross-cloud initiatives for our partners across the ecosystem. And then you got myself. I can help you if you're a partner in the EMEA region looking for enablement of marketing commerce. Now, I need one more minute before I can hand over to the speakers to cover some of the logistics for this webinar. So this is a series of 4 webinars, very important. So please make sure that you download the calendar file that you find linked in your webinar confirmation email so that you can import all those 4 dates into your calendar so that they will become available. Now, let's have a quick look at the agenda. We have a recording from April 24th on delivering integrated B2C experiences. We have one for data strategy from April 25. Today, April 30, we're going to look at the connectors and do a deep dive. We're going to talk about commerce to service, commerce to marketing. We're going to talk about Marketing Cloud Connect and the solution kits. And then in 2 days, on May 2nd, we're going to cover customer segmentations, top challenges, segmentation on the Salesforce platform, customer journey engagement, and exploring engagement models. So pretty cool stuff. A few more things. If you have questions, GoToWebinar has a button so that you can actually raise the questions, and we cover all of those at the end of the webinar and in between if necessary. You can also talk to us via partner community. There's a group called Official Cross Cloud B2C Experts Group that you can join. This is where you find the recordings if you are a partner. If you are a Salesforce employee, please look at Org62. This is where you find all the good stuff. Now, one very last thing, we got to talk about forward-looking statements. Now, you can imagine the speakers on this webinar series are all fired up and want to get you as excited as we are about Salesforce products and capabilities. Now, with that in mind, remember that from time to time, everybody gets carried away a little bit, and we may be using forward-looking statements to make sure do make sure that you make buying decisions only on products and capabilities that are available today. And with that, I would like to hand off to Mihir Panchal. Mihir, please take it away.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is morning where I am. And let's start with what we're going to cover today. First, before we get to that point, what is the Cross-Cloud program? As part of one of the things that we've seen is, as partners, we know that there's some challenges that you see when we're integrating Commerce Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Service or Sales Clouds together. And what we've done is we've actually put together a program that allows us, from Salesforce perspective, to help your partners like yourselves to actually make it easier, reduce some of that friction in deploying these multiple cloud solutions. And the other piece that we're also doing is we are also working with our internal teams to enable. So for those that are from Salesforce, we're available as a resource to help out from that perspective as well, as part of your projects or as part of just advisory capability. Ultimately, the goal is that we take some of the knowledge and lessons that we're learning here and we help drive that back into the products so that we can pave the way to drive this a future of the integrated customer experience that we talk about. So what are the key things that we're going to cover today? Today's session is around integrating Commerce to Marketing Cloud, Commerce to Service Cloud, using the connectors that we have. This second piece, we're also going to cover how you connect Marketing Cloud and Service Cloud through the Marketing Cloud connector. And last but not least, we're going to cover these examples of solution kits. Solution kits are something that we've launched. They're available to you, so we can actually cover those pieces as well. Couple of things, right? Again, don't forget to share your questions. In the last couple of webinars, we've had some really good questions, and if we can't answer certain questions, we're going to take those back and respond to all those questions separately and make it available to you through partner community as well, or through our internal means. So it's really important that you ask questions, and they really help make the webinar a lot more interesting, because then we can go do a little bit of back and forth. Second, please complete the survey. It's important we receive feedback. It's important that we learn on what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and where we need to change to make the webinars more interesting, as we'll continue to do these throughout the year. So let's start with the Commerce Cloud connectors. If you think about what are the different kinds of connectors available today, there's many names within the Salesforce portfolio that are called connectors. And here's just some examples, right? So if you look at on the left, we've got Salesforce Connect, we've got Marketing Cloud Connect, we've got Google Connect, we've got Postgres Connect, we've got tons of different connectors. And on the right is kind of the example of what we have through the B2C Commerce Cloud, and they're called the Marketing Cloud Connector and the Service Cloud Connector. As you think about them, what are the actual differences between these connectors, right? The stuff that's on the left, it's all productized. It has a very defined set of use cases that it supports, has a very predictable release cadence, configuration driven versus code, minimal implementation or moderate implementation, and it's supported through our technical support. Whereas on the right, what you see are a little bit of differences, right? So it's not productized, and it's really more of a framework to drive certain use cases. And then ultimately, it's really meant to accelerate the integration development, right? So it's not meant to be a, here's the set of features, but it's rather, here's where you get started, and then you can customize it further for the B2C commerce connectors. The second piece really that's important I want to highlight again is configuration driven. The Salesforce Connector product offerings are configuration driven, most likely, whereas the B2C commerce connectors require configuration as well as implementation within those different clouds. So for example, between commerce and service, you do need to actually have some code implementation done on Service Cloud and some code implementation done on Commerce Cloud. Last but not least, from a technical support perspective, as we think about the official support, the product offerings are supported through technical support, whereas the B2C commerce connectors are a set of open source code that's available to you to customize the integrations between both. So they are not eligible for technical support, so to speak. All the support teams will redirect internally to the right organization, so we can still help you. But from a support perspective, typically internally we engage through our support requests that we have. All right, let's start with this. So can I connect Commerce Cloud and Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud? Of course you can. We have connectors for that. Great, let's get started. And the customer says, yeah, I'm familiar with connectors. But the reality is, it's not that simple, right? It's actually more of, we have a development framework which covers those core set of integration use cases. And it's really important, this concept of development framework. We've seen partners, and I'm just being honest, we've seen partners where they felt like the connectors will do a lot more than they will. And we've had issues with things like scoping challenges when they are scoped as part of the implementation. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that when we talk about these and the work required, it's really meant as a development framework. So think about it as you're scoping it and providing estimates for customers, using that as the core set in mind. This goes kind of that, the right conversation that really needs to be having, right? So, oh, does it require development? Of course, it requires some development, and then we start to get into how much effort's required, what are the use cases, and we kind of dive into from that perspective. So as we think about integrating Commerce Cloud and Marketing Cloud, why is it important to think through that? What are the top use cases, and what are we trying to do with it? Really, the biggest thing is it really helps us simplify and centralize the email authoring and content management through one experience, which is Marketing Cloud. Really helps you understand kind of things like email performance, allows you to make it a lot better in terms of the personalization of content, what you're doing based on past purchases, customer interactions. So using the full power of the Marketing Cloud platform as a way to engage the customer versus just sending them some email. And ultimately, it helps with conversion rates from a business perspective, right? You're able to recapture revenue from abandonment scenarios. You can also do other, recommendations as part of that. So what are the use cases that are actually supported? It's personalized journeys, email recommendations, subscription management from a capability perspective. By connecting these clouds together, you can do some of these things. And then the other piece is also, you can also do transactional emails and behavioral emails, right? So as you think about it, what does that mean? Well, you can do things like account registration, forgot password, order confirmation. All those kinds of transaction emails are supported through the connector. And then the behavioral emails itself are things like abandoned cart, abandoned search, abandoned checkout. Really, most of our focus through the behavioral emails is around the abandoned cart capabilities. But these are the two types of use cases that are supported by the connector. And they require certain development and additional work that we'll walk through as part of this webinar today. So just to get a baseline one more time, what is the B2C Commerce to Marketing Cloud connector? Well, it's a Salesforce Labs supported commerce cartridge that really facilitates the platform customization necessary to integrate B2C Commerce Cloud and Marketing Cloud. Really, it's a framework. It's all done as above the API, so it's public APIs that we're using to integrate Commerce Cloud and Marketing Cloud. And more than anything else, it supports things like the transactional email trigger sense. It's actually making some things easier for you. So for example, there's already business logic built into the connectors to look at, oh, there's an order that was just placed, so you can actually go and trigger the appropriate email. So it does some of that work for you, so you don't have to do that work. So it's accelerating the overall integration between both the clouds.
Hi, Mihir. Sorry to interrupt you real quick. Is there a chirping sound of some sort coming out of your laptop?
No, let me check something.
Thanks. Thank you.
Are you still hearing it? Hold on. Let me. Sorry, guys. Apologies. Let me just.
Not an issue. Not an issue.
If you still hear it, let me know. I can.
No worries. Thank you, Mihir. Thank you.
All right. All right, I'm gonna switch back to presentation mode here and let me know when you can see my screen again.
We can, thanks, Mihir.
Okay. All right, so how does the connector work and what is it doing, right? Step one is you want to connect the catalogs, price books, and promotions as feeds on a scheduled basis and integrating into Marketing Cloud. Typically, you want to do that via SFTP. You can define the schedule, right, depending on kind of the needs. It could be a nightly batch. It could be, every few hours, or whatever makes the most sense. The key is you want to start that from the staging environment from Commerce Cloud into Marketing Cloud. And the reason for that is this is effort that you don't need to take resources away from the production environments. Typically, this data isn't changing as frequently as the data in your production environments. So it's okay to do it through the staging environment. The next piece that you want to do is you want to then have the integrations, the SFTP servers, SFTP input done through the production environments for orders and customer data. And that also goes into Marketing Cloud. So now you're starting to collect a set of information in Marketing Cloud that you can start to use to do additional emails, as well as you can use that during other use cases. So now, the next thing that you want to do after that, all right. So the next thing you want to do, once you've set up all of these order data that's coming into Marketing Cloud, you want to set up the automation. So you can use Automation Studio and use that as a way to build out the appropriate data extensions. And the key piece here is once you build those data extensions, that's where you can start to use some of this data. And then now that you've got that in place, the next step you need to do is to start to create the triggers and transactional emails, right? So the way you're going to do that is through the REST API calls here. So for things like transactional emails, you would use trigger send APIs from Marketing Cloud to send the appropriate emails through Commerce Cloud directly. And then for specific use cases like behaviorals, where you want to do things like abandoned cart, this is where you need to set up the collect.js, because what we're doing is we're actually using personalization builder within Marketing Cloud to do some of these emails. So you want to set up collect.js via the storefront. You want to enable that to drive the abandoned cart scenarios. That's the overall very high level view. So let's just quickly walk through it one more time because my screen was kind of delayed. You're going to first do the CSV file export from the staging environment for the catalog, product, price books into Marketing Cloud. You're going to also replicate the information of orders and customer information through SFTP into Marketing Cloud. Once you have all of that information, you're going to create automations within Marketing Cloud to convert those informations into data extensions that can be used for additional sending of emails. Specifically transactional emails, there's already templates available within the connector to be able to send those triggered send emails. And then secondly, for behavioral emails, you want to set up collect.js because you're going to use Marketing Cloud Personalization Builder as a way to send those emails. So those are kind of the key pieces, and all of these are steps that you want to make sure you do before starting your email series. But you can also do things that are not supported by the connector, right? You can actually have other use cases. Some use cases that we've seen customers do are things like coupon reminders or redemption tracking. So we've done things where customers want to generate coupons in Marketing Cloud, bring them into, generate coupons in Commerce Cloud, bring them into Marketing Cloud, and then use that as they get used or they get consumed, they can track which customers are actually doing that. We've also seen by using the OMS systems and integrating that into, you can also do things like tracking soft notifications, or you can also do new product information, so notifications. So let's walk through kind of what are the requirements, development requirements for the connector. One, you need to make sure that your controllers and the cartridges are set up properly. So within the Commerce Cloud itself, you need to make sure that the int_Marketing Cloud cartridge has been set up and you extended the controllers accordingly. And there's requirements and things already defined in the GitHub repository for that. The service definition configuration, configure the REST services to interact with Marketing Cloud for transactional emails. The collect.js piece that we talked about, both implementation on the client side needs to be done and on the server side so that we can support the behavioral email captures. And then the custom hooks are set up. So if you wanted to do things like opt-in, opt-out, you want to track some of those things, you want to make sure that those custom hooks are set up within Commerce Cloud. Within Commerce Cloud, we're also using custom objects as a way to manage those trigger sends. So you want to make sure that the custom objects are leveraged, and that's probably the best way of doing this. And then ultimately, the multiple jobs that we've talked about in terms of data feeds, etc., are set up properly so that we can do the export into Marketing Cloud. Also, the other thing here, as I mentioned earlier during the call, is if there are challenges here, if you have questions, please reach out to the success manager from a customer's perspective, and then we can actually get engaged as part of that project and help out as we need to. Within Marketing Cloud itself, there's a couple of things. One, you want to make sure that you've got all the right prerequisites from a marketing perspective in terms of the capabilities and products. So things like if you want to do abandoned cart, make sure they have personalization builder. Make sure you have Automation Studio and email, which typically is most of the times, but just want to make sure all the products are there. This is really something that you should keep in mind. If you plan on using the personalization builder, there is a services required specifically for the triggers that are needed to convert the collect.js data that's collecting into personalization filter into an audience file. That trigger work is still something where the Marketing Cloud services engagement is required for. There's some work that we're looking at as a future roadmap. I don't have timelines on it, but to remove that need for the services engagement, but we're not there yet. The next item is the personalization builder itself. Again, make sure that you've got these set up properly and you have the appropriate licenses so that we can drive the results. Okay, App Center, each business unit connecting to Commerce Cloud will require a unique API key. So if you're doing a BU to the different sites within Commerce, then you want to make sure that each of that is generated at the BU level. And then triggered send configuration, you just need to make sure that those are configured again as well at the business unit level. And then the predictive web configuration stuff that we talked about, make sure that that is set up because without that, you're not going to be able to do actual abandoned cart or behavioral recommendations or behavioral emails as well. And then just as a reminder, one more time, right? For that trigger work, there is a professional services required, and it's really important. We've seen that not being the case, or customer partners and customers weren't aware of it, and has led to issues later on. So it's just important to keep that in mind. Some additional items, the SFTP configuration, you want to make sure that that's set up as a way to bring that data back from Commerce Cloud into Marketing Cloud. The product and content catalog feeds, the Commerce Cloud data feed consumption is going to be managed via personalization builder. So really, you can use the catalog and those creations as well through the personalization builder as well. Customer and order feeds. This is kind of the import via Journey Builder so that you can bring that into custom data extensions. So let's go through a specific use case. Let's start with transactional emails. How will this actually work? And by the way, all of this information is available through Solution Kits. Solution Kits, we'll put a link in the partner community. Those are available on help.salesforce.com. I've just converted them into a PowerPoint here, but they're PDFs that walk you through exactly what needs to be done for each of these use cases. So we'll cover things like this workflow, right? So if you were to do a transactional email with order confirmation, how would you go about it, right? So in this example, you're going to create the data export from Commerce Cloud. We're going to create the catalog and order data. We're going to create the push of that data through Commerce Cloud into Marketing Cloud, and the data is imported. And then as I talked through in the diagram earlier, we're going to create those specific data extensions in Marketing Cloud. So it walks you through what that setup needs to be. And then from a Commerce Cloud perspective, what are kind of the key things that you need to do? So in this case, it's the transactions initiated via order placement. It will actually trigger that into Marketing Cloud. And that trigger itself contains the order data in the XML format. So this is how the triggered send is going to be sent. And we recommend that you put in the email address as well as the contact name as part of that in case the customer changed the email address just before ordering something. So you can make sure that that data, as we talked about in the last webinar, you have the latest data when you're sending this email out. The transactional email delivery then walks through just the standard Marketing Cloud capabilities, right? It will actually look at that trigger send API, what the data is coming through in XML. It will parse it, and then it will send that out to as an email. The key things that we, again, just as a reminder, right? Set up that SFTP account. Commerce Cloud can generate the API calls to trigger that confirmation email, so it makes sense to use that. And then obviously you need to build the email templates in Marketing Cloud. couple of things in terms of the configuration steps. We covered the SFTP, just follow the kind of standards there. The product catalog import, you want to make sure that the storefront catalog is regularly imported into Marketing Cloud so that you have the latest SKUs and the information for those product SKUs in Marketing Cloud, so you can use that information as part of the emails that you send out. The other big item is the triggers. You can customize the storefront and replace those generated order confirmation logic with the appropriate trigger send API. So you want to make sure that configuration is actually done within Commerce Cloud. Specifically, some solution design considerations that we need to look at. Streaming updates are a not good fit for where you have a lot of high variant SKU to product ratios. Essentially, if you have that many different SKUs, think about some other ways of doing it, right? You're probably better off just importing them in. You can also look at the catalog model depending on the number of languages and currencies. So you need to kind of think about those because it will impact how you import those catalogs in Marketing Cloud. Data extensions, the order confirmation email templates leverages supplemental data. So this is really important. This shipping methods is used to retrieve labels and descriptions for shipping methods leveraged for an order. So you want to make sure that you're bringing this data in. And then the Salesforce B2C commerce triggers for order confirmation. The key piece really here is that the legacy email delivery logic for order confirmation should be replaced with this. So there is already some capabilities in Commerce Cloud to do some of this work. You want to make sure that you're replacing that with the Marketing Cloud connector as a way to integrate that into Marketing Cloud. The next use case, very quickly, abandoned cart. And in the interest of time, I may skip through some of this just because we've got a lot more content to cover today. If you think about the abandoned cart flow, the biggest item here is the collect.js code. What you want to do is set up the collect.js code within each of the sites, the websites that you have. So if you're going to do abandoned cart, you want to make sure you've got the collect.js code set up there that tracks whether a person has abandoned that cart or not. And when that individual's abandoned that cart, you're essentially using the triggers in Personalization Builder to then create the appropriate events as well as the audience files to then put them in a journey or put them through an email. So this part is really important as part of abandoned cart to be able to do this work. So things that you want to do for abandoned cart specifically, set up that collect code, customize the collect code to track each cart, link to recreate the cart within Marketing Cloud actually requires custom work. So if you're going to do something like, hey, I want to recreate this cart logic, then you actually need to build some additional logic in Commerce Cloud to support this work. There isn't a way to automatically recreate the cart. So this is custom work. And then you'll need to create an API endpoint to be able to build that cart content. Set up the catalog import in Marketing Cloud. So using the connector, make sure that you're importing that catalog into Marketing Cloud and that you evaluate whether you need a streaming update or not. And then set up triggers in Marketing Cloud. So the key piece here is going to be that the Salesforce Marketing Cloud service is required. The biggest piece here is build your email templates, the appropriate promotions. Sorry, was there something you want to say? Okay. Define journeys and email wait periods, set up the process to put the customer in the journey, and then triggers that will listen for that. Whether you do it on a 1 hour timeline, 2 hour timeline, it really depends on how you want to do that and what the customer really wants to do. And then the triggers will add that user to the list after that timer has been passed for sending out the abandoned cart emails. Email recommendations. So if you want to do recommendations within the email, so on top of doing the abandoned cart email, you also want to add new recommendations as part of that. Then you'll also need to set up to bring kind of the purchase history and customer information, which we talked about earlier. And then the click tracking in the email, there's already some capability through Marketing Cloud Einstein, that will actually do some of that work for you. But then if the customer has Google Analytics 360, you can leverage some of those capabilities to then also do it. The key piece here is just use one of them. Don't use Einstein and Google Analytics 360 because they both track just a little bit differently. So the numbers may not add up. So if the customer wants to do one or the other, just pick the one they want to do. I think I covered a lot of these, so I'm going to keep skipping through this in the interest of time and do the Commerce and Service Cloud. So the integration between Commerce and Service Cloud really provides two things. One, allows you to very easily see what are all the different orders and order history set up between that a customer has done in Commerce Cloud very easily from Service Cloud. So as a representative, customer service representative, I can very quickly just look at the customer name, search for them, and it will give me their entire order history within Service Cloud. So it really makes it very easy from that perspective. If a customer has issues or challenges, it will allow things like case creations to be very, very straightforward. The connector takes care of a lot of that. And then ultimately, if you wanted to do some additional customizations to do like cross-sell and upsell, it really allows you to do things like order on behalf from Service Cloud directly with the connector so that you can order on behalf of that customer. And then ultimately, you can actually then create some additional experiences if you wanted to, because you've got a lot of that data within Service Cloud itself. So a couple of key things that it does. Unified customer views allows you to kind of see the 360 view of the customer because you have all of the information in Service Cloud, including cases. Allows the case creation capability from Commerce Cloud to Service Cloud. Allows the ability for the agent to order on behalf of, consolidate order history. And then the other piece is really, it actually synchronizes data. So in the back of all of the processes, there's an ongoing sync between Commerce Cloud and Service Cloud, where it's checking if the data needs to be synchronized, and it will actually do that work for you. So it has a process that's already built in. So if there's some sync failure that happened for whatever reason, it will go and check if that was fixed, and it will fix that if it hasn't been fixed as well. So that's a really good capability to have as part of the connector. Just like the Marketing Cloud connector, it's a commerce cartridge that enables integration of commerce and service. Again, it is an open source cartridge. And the key piece here is it allows integration it actually accelerates the integration from a time to market perspective. So how does the connector work? Let's start with some Service Cloud. Okay, so let's say you've created a case and you need help with an order, or you've called into the call center and you need help with a specific order. So Service Cloud in this case can use the order on behalf capabilities from Commerce Cloud and actually use the REST APIs to launch the Commerce Cloud storefront. It actually uses the connected app that's set up between Service Cloud and Commerce Cloud to authenticate, and uses the Okapi credentials that have been set up in Commerce Cloud, and those are stored in a specific object within Service Cloud to then log into Commerce Cloud as that specific user. Orders and cases are then created, and you can essentially look at that information through the Lightning console. Now, the other piece that's also happening is the orders, cases, the customer contact are consistently updated and synchronized between both clouds using their APIs that exist. And then there's the sync process that I talked about, which also makes sure that all the recurring jobs have been enabled, and they provide a fail-safe way to connect the clouds and ensuring that all those orders are brought back into Service Cloud. Customer information is updated in Service Cloud as well. So if we go through it, step one really is kind of all your order information, etc. When you create a new order or you create a new customer, the connector goes into Service Cloud and checks whether that customer exists. If that customer exists, then it will actually push the order into that specific customer. If the customer does not exist, it will actually create the customer record in Service Cloud. When you actually register for that customer as a customer, it will then create that, bring that Service Cloud ID into Commerce Cloud. And then when the order is placed, it will actually associate that order and customer ID in Service Cloud. That's the work I just talked about. And then when you are checking out, and also when you do certain things like contact us, it goes and creates the case for that specific customer into Service Cloud itself. And then last but not least, it will actually do the synchronization in the backend to check, make sure that the data is flowing back and forth between Commerce Cloud and Service Cloud. So what are some of the key things to consider and the limitations? It supports real-time peer-to-peer data synchronization, but it does not do bulk support. So if you want to store, if you want to bring in a lot of data of, say, the customer already had Service Cloud and now they're installing Commerce Cloud, you want to bring all of those contacts into Commerce Cloud, make sure you do that through a bulk process, not through the connector. The connector will not support that. Requires configuration of the storefront. Obviously, you need to customize the B2C Commerce Cloud storefront to change the contact us and registration to support the connector capabilities into Service Cloud first. The connector only supports person accounts today. Accounts and contacts are not supported. But if you do need to make changes because the customer is using the accounts and contacts model in Service Cloud, there is ways to customize the connector. You can actually change the code in the connector to support accounts and contacts. The work required there is a lot of work done through the Service Cloud Apex that's being built up, and you can make changes there, and some work required on the Commerce Cloud connector itself. For the order on behalf of, it's really important that each agent has their own user account, and each agent has a very specific configuration setting for being able to do order on behalf of, and I'll walk through that in the example. Multiple shipments aren't supported. Oops, sorry. Multiple shipments are not supported today, and discounts are not displayed in Service Cloud. So that's, again, another thing to just keep in mind. So again, what are some of the key development requirements? You need to set up the Service Cloud cartridge within Commerce Cloud. You need to configure the REST service to interact with Service Cloud for the just-in-time data synchronization. All of this documentation is covered in the GitHub repository for the connector. It really goes through it step by step on exactly what you need to do. So please take a look at that as well. The Okapi provisioning request, they must be accessible by Service Cloud. So it's really important that you've done that work. You've also set up the custom hooks, and then you've set up the appropriate job, the fail-safe stuff that we talked about, that the job is set up for that scheduling as well. On the Service Cloud front, really you need to set up an integration user with administrator rights so that you can actually do the connection between both the clouds. You must set up connected app. That's the only way to authenticate between the two clouds. And what's really interesting is the entire script, the capabilities required on the Service Cloud side, it's all deployed via Ant script, so it really makes things easy to set up things on the Service Cloud side. There's a remote site configuration required so that you can connect to Commerce Cloud, and that is done in the Service Cloud side as well. And then we talked about the name credential piece earlier. You must have a name credential so that you can set up the Commerce Cloud connectivity. And then within the Service Cloud side of things, you need to set up the page layouts. So a lot of these are Lightning components that are set up in Service Cloud, and you need to make sure that those Lightning components are added to the appropriate console layout that you're going to do within Service Cloud. Oh, one other thing, right? I mean, I know this is pretty obvious for most people, but just make sure that you're setting up all of this in Sandbox first, and then you deploy into production. And then here's one use case that we'll quickly walk through. So let's talk through order on behalf. How will this actually work with the connector today? So the customer contacts Service Cloud with an order request. Let's say you've got a call, hey, I can't do something, I can't place this order, I need help. What now this customer service representative is going to do is they're going to look at the email address via the Service Console, for example. And what it does is Service Cloud is going to look at the person account. It looks at the information. The CSR finds that specific customer information and then looks at the order history. And what happens here is actually two pieces, right? Either you're looking at the order history and you're going through that, but if you're doing something like order on behalf of, it will essentially look at what are the specific orders that have been initiated. And then what Service Cloud can do now is if the customer says, hey, I need help placing this order, the Service Cloud, and there's a lightning button in the UI that you can select, that button will launch the Commerce Cloud instance by authenticating against the B2C via Okapi. It verifies the order on behalf of rights for that specific agent. And then once that's done, it will actually launch the actual order on behalf UI, and you'll see a name on top of it, which will say you're ordering on behalf of this person. There's a red banner, so you can actually see that this is a order on behalf session that's happening within Commerce Cloud. The Commerce Cloud places, and the CSR will place the order as that customer. And then once the order is placed, it gets the confirmation. It actually gets, a record gets created in Service Cloud, and then the CSR or the customer service rep can now confirm that that order has been placed. And then the customer will receive the order confirmation email. A couple of key things to consider here. Ensure that all CSRs are Service Cloud users. It's really important. And that they have these two credentials, login on behalf and login agent in Business Manager. So all of those CSRs that will support this capability need to have this. The setup, obviously, use the GitHub repository to set up the cartridge. And then the Lightning components, as I mentioned. You can add the order detail component and the cancel into the Service Cloud console. The order on behalf, by the way, the button is only available in the case object today. So you need to make sure that you've set up the console that way so that you can have the case view within the console so that you can do the order on behalf if you want to. And then map these custom settings to the address field for Commerce Cloud. So the Commerce Cloud billing, shipping, name, and object fields into Service Cloud. The customer, if you're going to do order on behalf, must be a registered Commerce Cloud customer. You're not going to be able to do it otherwise, so it doesn't support guest users. The Service Cloud must support person accounts, as I mentioned. You can do contact support if you customize the connectors. And then the Commerce Cloud password are rotated every 90 minutes. So this is something to keep in mind, that sync has to happen in Service Cloud as well. So if you make that change, you make that change in Service Cloud so that the agent can log in. And then the SSO is not supported for Commerce Cloud users today, so they must have their own username and password. There's a couple other things you need to make sure we do. Custom fields and Commerce Cloud need to be mapped into the Salesforce platform via custom settings. And if you have new fields that you want to bring in to Commerce Cloud, this is where you're going to do it as well. So let's say you've got another field you want to add in. I'm just going to make something up like address line number 2. You bring that data into Commerce Cloud via custom settings in Salesforce. And then you're also going to map that within the connector so that you can bring both of those informations in. Each REST code made by Commerce Cloud actually counts against the governor limits. So this is something to keep in mind. If you have a lot of orders and a lot of customers, there may be a challenge of reaching that governor limit API limits for that given customer. If you see that through test or any other processes, please reach out to Salesforce because you'll need to increase their limits. It's going to be a process to make sure that that's done so that customer doesn't hit this issue. And then, as I said earlier, right, all the data stored in Salesforce is driven by these custom field mappings of the core objects. I'm going to actually skip questions because we're already at 8:50 and we only have another half an hour. So at this point, I would like to switch over to Derek. Derek, are you able to take over?
Yeah, Mihir, would you mind continuing to advance the slides for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you. So as Mihir's talked about the commerce to marketing and commerce to service cloud integrations, now we're going to pivot into the service or sales to marketing cloud. Our connector is actually a productized integration. It's not a framework, so the functionality that exists is really part of the product itself. This slide here is just kind of an overview to show you how the two clouds connect, or how the two different systems connect. And it's to make sure that we're all mindful of the integration being through API calls in both directions. And keeping, again, the idea that it is a productized integration, but underneath the hood, it's still leveraging the APIs, will help us talk about this with customers as well. So just a quick overview. This is kind of the outline of what we're going to be talking about. These are the primary features of the integration of MC Connect and what it can do. We're going to break it down into the three areas: the Marketing Cloud Connect package, which exists as an installed component inside of Service Cloud. We're going to talk through synchronized data sources, which has also been called Data Sync, and we're finally going to talk through a little bit on Journey Builder integration as well. I should point out that it is, we do have integrations that are compatible with all of the Force distributions. So we've got Sales, Service, and Community as well. And we'll go ahead and talk through each of these. Before we dig into those specific features, this is kind of redundant a little bit to some of the things Mihir was talking about earlier, but it is important when you're looking at cross-cloud data to think about the data model, to understand how that data flows and what the unique identifiers are across cloud. When it comes to Marketing Cloud Connect, there really is no other option if you want to leverage the integrations that have been productized other than using the Service Cloud Contact Record ID or Lead Record ID. It's a unique ID that gets tagged automatically to the Marketing Cloud subscriber. Some of the questions that you're going to want to talk through, some of the things in discovery really are going to surround the permanence of the unique identifier in the Service Cloud instance. So is the customer leveraging some sort of lead conversion process? Are they tracking engagement against emails through Marketing Cloud to those leads? Is there a way for them to perhaps pivot away from the lead record itself if they want to retain that engagement history and keep a clean record across clouds, pivot towards having the contact record with some kind of custom field or attribute that indicates whether it's a qualified contact or still just a lead. Because the unique identifier is what Marketing Cloud leverages, and again, the productized, non-customizable solution, it's really important to make sure that the customer understands the potential pain points of fracturing that model by providing two separate or more distinct records within unique identifiers within Marketing Cloud. Let's go ahead and advance to the next slide here. For those of you who are not familiar with Marketing Cloud, our primary key from an email standpoint is subscriber key, also from a mobile standpoint. Subscriber key is essentially the unique identifier within the Marketing Cloud for each contact, each human. And it's best to talk about this in terms of humans because contacts, subscribers, leads, customers, all of those terms have some basis and grounding in the system that they come from. But at the end of the day, what we're really interested in doing is making sure we understand how to identify the human that exists underneath all of these different data points. And so within the Marketing Cloud, the human is identified through a subscriber key. And again, with Marketing Cloud Connect, we're going to assign the subscriber key. The human is going to have the same identifier in Service Cloud as it does inside of Marketing Cloud. Here are some best practices. Essentially, when you integrate, as I've said, with Service Cloud, you're going to want to leverage that 18-digit contact or lead ID. Service Cloud has, by default, a 15-digit key. The 18-digit is a translation. It's it's a case-insensitive variant, and that's what the productized integration leverages. So that integration is automatic as long as you're leveraging the product. Email address is one of those things that's classically been used as a subscriber key within the Marketing Cloud. It is very easy if you're using a single channel and no integrated clouds to say email address is unique, but we have many instances and have seen many instances where customers might share email addresses with their family. We also have instances where the customer changes their email address and having your subscriber key fixed at the original email address that they may have signed up for your services isn't really the best way to keep the data clean. It is possible, but if you're integrating with other clouds, it's strongly recommended you don't leverage anything other than that 18-digit record ID. As a result of the customizations you would need to build, essentially you need to replicate any productized functionality and custom solutions to leverage other keys. So it's important to get that bit of data right up front. I should also add there is an ability of the Salesforce services folks to migrate those keys over. So in the event that you have an existing Marketing Cloud implementation where email was used, hope is not all lost. Our services folks can assist there. However, that is something that only our services teams are capable of doing. It's kind of data heart surgery in the back end. So do get in contact if that's something that your customers need. We'd be happy to walk you through that process. All right, so let's get back into the MC Connect product functionality. First up, we're going to talk through the Marketing Cloud Connect managed package. It's unfortunate we call everything connectors, but it's kind of just what to get used to. So Marketing MC Connector, the MC Connector, the Marketing Cloud Connector is really the Commerce Cloud terminology. MC Connect, Marketing Cloud Connect is the integration that's productized between Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, and Marketing Cloud. And here what we're going to be looking at, on the left, you can see the contacts, leads, the users. We're going to be passing to the Marketing Cloud, again, over API, any messaging requests. We're going to be sending emails, and then we're going to return back into Sales and Service Cloud, the subscriber tracking information. Those arrows really across this entire diagram are, again, to remind us that this is an API-based integration, and that can help, again, frame the discussion in terms of what is possible. All right, so what does the managed package do? First, it provides that integration between the clouds. It's going to help you authenticate into the Marketing Cloud to perform individual sends. It allows individual users on the Service and Sales Cloud side to leverage Marketing Cloud as the sending engine. It also allows you to set up automated triggers, automated workflow-based actions, where you can inject contacts into journeys. You can automatically send emails as certain flags get updated within the Service Cloud instance as well. And it also creates a number of custom objects that are instantiated by the managed package, and those objects are leveraged to help primarily manage the email integration along with the tracking data. This is a nice high-level slide. It just kind of gives you the visual of what's possible. There is a slight breakout here in that Community Cloud reporting is not something that you can send to from communities, but we do have support for sales and service across reports, campaigns, and individual people, individual humans. So from the CRM side, from the Sales and Service Cloud side, you are capable of sending to a report segmented through Report Builder, to a campaign on the campaign object, and to a person individually on their own contact record. And this shows you the interface. I should point out here, it's a good thing to point out here that the send flow interface, which is what you're seeing here, is not a Lightning screen-based, Lightning component-based interface. This is a classic Visualforce implementation. The admin components are Lightning compatible, which allows you to configure everything in the back end according to our standard best practices, but the send flow itself is classic and is not likely to be updated soon. With the roadmap is not something that's in our control, but to the best of our knowledge, we have not seen any targets for converting this over to Lightning. This interface mimics largely what you'll see in the Marketing Cloud, which allows you to schedule the email. You can actually select the email message that's been created inside of a Marketing Cloud, and you can also select the recipients here as well. Within the contacts screen, again, there is this link that gets added as part of the implementation. The implementation itself is completely self-service, so it is possible for you to do the entire MC Connect installation. Again, the only piece being that subscriber key migration, if that were something that your customers needed. Everything else is self-service, and instructions are available online. Part of that installation creates this send email to contact link within the contact record page inside of a block. And those sends will automatically return the tracking data back associated with the contact record inside of Service Cloud. Okay, speaking of tracking data, let's talk about tracking data. So there's a lot of time spent talking about tracking data. Many of the use cases that leverage MC Connect rely on the ability of, for example, service agents to see the email tracking data. You can track sends, you can track opens and clicks, and that's one of the really big kind of powerful advantages of leveraging Marketing Cloud in this process. These are the sends that will automatically return tracking data back to Salesforce. Anything through Journey Builder will automatically tag individual contact tracking data back. Any sends you initiate from the Service Cloud side will. Guided sends to Salesforce data extensions inside of the Marketing Cloud. There's a subset of data extensions that you can, essentially you put them in a folder called Salesforce data extensions, and anything using one of those DEs as an audience will automatically send tracking data back. Triggered sends from the core side as well will do it. Other sends, like a direct triggered send, will not automatically send data back to CRM. So when you're looking at cross-cloud use cases and you want to trigger an email from Commerce Cloud to have the tracking data end up back in Service Cloud where the email is sent through Marketing Cloud, you essentially want to leverage something like a Journey Builder API entry event to inject the contact in and then have the email send as part of the journey to ensure that the tracking data associated with that email send makes it back. It's a slight variant on the direct call triggered send API, but it allows that tracking data to flow automatically into core. These are the different types of tracking data that's available inside of Service Cloud. We'll track aggregate level data at the email level, the send statistics for the email itself, and then we'll also track at the individual level, which can include things like opens and clicks, and it can also include sent events. The biggest challenge here, and this is something that's customizable through the UI on the Service Cloud side within the admin of the managed package, you can select how long you want to persist the data, and you can select what level of detail you'd like to persist as well inside of Service Cloud. The best thing to think about here and talk through with your customers is the Service Cloud essentially is a recency snapshot for all of your tracking and engagement data. The Marketing Cloud is the permanent database of record, the repository for historic engagement data. So any use cases that require older engagement data may have to find a different route than storing that data inside of Service Cloud, and that will also help you protect yourself from storage limitations that can be bumped up against fairly quickly as the Marketing Cloud generates quite a bit of data. These are some simple troubleshooting steps. First, you want to just make sure that the integration is actually connected. And if you don't see any IERs, IERs is the acronym for the individual email results. That's one of the custom object types that gets added to the Service Cloud object model as part of the managed package installation. You just want to make sure that you've got that individual level tracking option checked in order to get those records to show up. You also need to make sure that if the individual user is authenticated into the Marketing Cloud, and they can do that by going to the Marketing Cloud tab inside of Service Cloud. Let's talk about the second option, the second component of MC Connect. This is synchronized data sources. Over the years, you've probably heard different terms for it. Data sync is another one that you'll typically hear. This is a way to get, and you can see the arrow here points only toward the Marketing Cloud from Service Cloud. This is a way to get any CRM object, any sales, service, or community object to replicate down to Marketing Cloud. It's a one-way movement of data. The key here, whenever you integrate with Marketing Cloud, is to remember that we don't market to non-humans, we market to humans. So initially, when you configure synchronized data sources, you're going to want to make sure that you've got users or contacts or leads. Some record is synchronized down that will allow you to send to that person, send to that human. So the first record is going to be a human record. When you create, we'll talk about journeys in a minute, but when you inject people into journeys, you have to remember, again, you're injecting humans, you're not injecting other record types. So it's not going to be orders that you're injecting. It's not going to be orders that you're sending to. It's really the customer in the order that you're going to send to. So as part of this synchronized data sources interface, we are actually enforcing the object dependencies. So the related objects that are required to be synced in order to have access to the data that they relate to. That's going to be enforced automatically by the application, which makes it a little bit easier for you. We can tab over to the next slide here to talk about the configuration options inside of synchronized data sources. Before we do that, just one quick call out. It does support standard and custom Salesforce objects. The one caveat here is, again, going back to our API integration. The API integration is through the replication API inside of Sales and Service Cloud. It has a couple of things to call out there. One is there's a 600,000 record limit coming from each call. We replicated about a 15-minute interval, I think, is the minimum. But if you have more than 600,000 records that have been updated within the last 15 minutes, we do some things behind the scenes to try and accommodate that and catch up. Most customers don't have any issues with this. And again, that's kind of handled behind the scenes, but just so you're aware of the mechanisms we're using, it's the replication API in the back end. The other piece of that is our ability to support objects. So here we have standard and custom objects are supported. Going into the weeds a little bit here, just keeping track of the fact that individual APIs have their own individual versions, and they have certain object definitions that they support at each version. So the Marketing Cloud, I think, currently is at version 42 of the replication API. So any objects or fields that have been created, field types that have been created as part of the standard object model, since then, we'll need to have Marketing Cloud Connect's product team update to the most current version. They do that periodically. So it's just something to keep an eye on. The latest objects existing inside of Service Cloud may or may not be available in sync. You're just going to have to take a look again at that API version. Okay, so this is a pretty quick high-level view. It's very user-friendly. It's very easy to configure. You're going to pick which object you'd like to sync, and you're going to select the fields that you'd like to sync, and then we'll move on. And then lastly, you're going to configure the settings. Now, there's a couple of things here worth pointing out. One, you can focus on records that have an email address. You can focus on records created before a certain date. But those of you who are tuning back in and haven't taken a look at synchronized data sources in a while, you're going to notice a new option that allows you to filter based on a Boolean value inside of a field. So if you create a Boolean field inside of Service Cloud checkbox, you can filter those records that sync into Marketing Cloud based on the value of that checkbox. The only call out here is the checkboxes that you're able to filter on have to be part of the field set that you've selected as part of the configuration. This really does help with some testing strategies, allows you to configure specific objects, subsets of records for specific objects that you'd like to bring into Marketing Cloud in order to either specialize the group, pick a specific segment that the marketing team has access to, or the opposite, you can prevent the marketing team from gaining access to records that they shouldn't have access to based on this configuration. And this just shows you the interface, what it looks like once you've completed the sync. We can pass through here. All right, the last component here we're going to talk through is Journey Builder integration. And this is a really useful tool. If we could go ahead and advance through. Oh, sorry, go back one. Perfect. So again, API calls back and forth. Any CRM object can trigger a journey. But again, we're talking about injecting humans into the journey. And so inside of Journey Builder, if you're not familiar with Journey Builder, there are kind of two pieces. One is the entry source, the entry event, the listener, and the rest is the canvas where you configure all of the different activities. Send email, waits, decision splits. There's also some activities that come as part of the MC Connect integration that allow you to influence and update data inside of Service Cloud. We're going to just kind of high level, quick tour through some of those. One of the concepts that exists inside of Journey Builder, for those who haven't used it before, is the concept that there is journey data and there's contact data. And it's worth pointing out simply because sometimes the human enters the journey with certain information, certain states, certain flags, certain loyalty points levels, and that kind of thing. And over the course of time, a journey that may not just be a single email send, it may last for a series of drip campaigns over time, maybe a few weeks. In a few weeks, some of their data is different now. And so there's a little bit of a concept here just to keep in mind. There's the journey data, the entry data you come into the journey with, and that's kind of a snapshot at the moment in time they've been injected into the journey. And then further down the journey, you'll be leveraging more contact data where you're actually looking at things like the synchronized data sources to consider current attributes of the subscriber, of the contact. So the integration with Journey Builder through MC Connect, you're able to listen to updates inside of Service Cloud when records get created or when records get updated. You can automatically inject contacts, humans into the journey and do it conditionally based on whatever set of criteria you establish. This is leveraging flows. This is leveraging Apex on the Service Cloud side. And so if you have consultants who are fluent in that space, they're going to be very helpful here to help you understand what's going on and understand if there needs to be any troubleshooting on that side. But it is really meant to be push button configurable. It does not require any coding to set up the journey entry events, but it is leveraging those mechanisms inside of CRM. So again, from a support and troubleshooting standpoint, it's useful to have someone on your team who's able to work in that capacity. Perfect. So I think that's it for the high level. Oh, we're talking about each. Sorry, each of the entry events. We do have different entry events. So this is again back to how people get into the journey. When you configure it inside of Marketing Cloud, you can select from the community event, the campaign event, or the data event. The community event is paying attention to community-specific updates. In fact, new members to the community. I think we're digging into that here in the next slide, Mihir, if you wouldn't mind advancing. We start with data. Okay, so data entry events are the universal kind of jack of all trades entry event. You can leverage this to access updates or creation on any object that Marketing Cloud Connect is aware of. So again, back to the version number, any object that exists or a standard object in version 42 or before, or any custom object that's been built with the field types that are recognized, again, in that version. This is really the workhorse. This is the one that you're probably going to leverage the most. It allows you the most flexibility. You can filter on the object itself, and you also have the option to filter on related objects as part of the configuration. So it might be a certain subset of contacts, and it might be a certain subset of contacts where their order history has some property associated with it. The community entry source really is limited specifically to new members into the community. One of the things that's just something to be aware of is it's important for you to understand the data model inside of Service Cloud in order to be able to solve certain use cases, triggering off of different objects, making sure that community specifically leverages users and also contacts. And so some of the objects inside of Service Cloud relate to the user and other objects relate to the contact. And it's important to just kind of audit the use cases from a data model standpoint inside of Service Cloud to understand the correct approach here to solving for them. And then lastly, there's a campaign entry source. This allows you to inject contacts, humans, into the journey as soon as they're added to a campaign. There's another product offering we have called distributed marketing, and distributed marketing leverages campaigns, the object type. It uses a slightly different way to get contacts into the journey, but when you're in Journey Builder specifically, you can leverage the campaign entry source as a way to get it in there. A quick call out on this, there are synchronous updates currently happening with the campaign member onto the campaign record type. And if you look at Service Cloud record contention, campaign is one of the high contention objects, campaign member. And just to be cautious here, it sometimes can bog down and take more time than you'd expect, be less performant than you'd like at scale. So in the event that you've got a large contact pool going through, you may want to consider looking at a custom object type rather than using the out-of-the-box campaign object type because of that record contention. I think we'll pick up the pace a little bit here, just being mindful of time. These are some of the activities that exist inside of the canvas. So again, we talked about Journey Builder basically having two main pieces. One is the entry event and one is the activity canvas. These are some Salesforce activities that come along with the implementation. So you've got object activity, again, is kind of the jack of all trades, similar to the data entry event. The object activity allows you to create and update any record inside of CRM. So you're able to not only inject contacts as a result of updates that exist on the Service Cloud side, but you can also create cases or create case comments or other record types inside of CRM based on their progress in the journey. This is just an example. You can see the configured entry event there, and that's the canvas. Those of you who haven't seen it yet, this is what the canvas would look like. There's some weights, there's an email send activity in there, and there's actually a lead conversion in here as well, further down, which is the Salesforce activity that comes along with the implementation. Here's another example. This one's using the Salesforce data entry event, and there's a decision split at the beginning, an email send. We're adding them to a campaign on the top path there for the positive. And then on the bottom, we're sending a case closed negative feedback email with a follow-up task that we've created inside of Service Cloud for someone to reach out to the contact again. There's quite a few options here. It is a standard flow chart design, and you can even leverage some of the synchronized data as part of your decision splits to help. We can go ahead. Yep. So Marketing Cloud installation concepts, let's just go through this again at a high level. All of this is documented online. What I wanted to call out here is that there is a need for an API user on the Marketing Cloud side and an API user on the Service and Sales Cloud side. The API user on the Service Sales Cloud side, in our terminology from an implementation standpoint, is called the system user. On the Marketing Cloud side, is called the API user, but they are both API capable users. Inside of the Service Cloud, it is our best practice recommendation to have it be a system admin profile user in order to make sure that all of the different integrations work. I know this is a challenge for some customers. If you don't intend to go down that path, you can run into some limitations. Some things may not work. The other best practice recommendation here is to make sure that it's a user that is not someone's login. make sure it's a system user API that is not regularly logged into after the configuration. The last bullet point there is just any user inside of Service Cloud who is interested in trying to send messages to individual contacts or reports, they will also have to have a user account inside of Marketing Cloud so that we can connect that functionality up, authenticate the individual Sales Service Cloud user into Marketing Cloud, and give them the access to the email sending engine. Okay, other things. Subscriber key has to be enabled on the account. We've talked about subscriber key a little bit. That is something that's required. And then again, this is back to the IDs as well. We do support person accounts. We always send communications to the contact record or the lead object. You can consider the person account a contact essentially. So there's a concept of scope by user and non-scope by user inside the implementation of Marketing Cloud Connect. There are plenty of help documents around this topic, but essentially what it does is it allows you to restrict the access of things like reports from the Marketing Cloud user based on their own Service Cloud access levels. There are some callouts here. Once the data has been imported into the Marketing Cloud, it's in a data extension and then it's kind of open and accessible. So this tends not to be as big of a thing today, but non-scope by user will use the integrated user accounts in order to set a global level of access based on that user's permissions. API usage. So again, APIs being the main integration method we've got, it's just important to point out here that we're using connected app authentication with the Marketing Cloud Connect managed package, which means we can bypass a number of the limits that exist in an API from an API standpoint. Bulk API calls and login calls do not bypass those limits. They are still tracked against it, and we use bulk API calls for many of our tracking updates. So they're usually, if a customer runs against API limits, they're doing something at a tremendously large scale or something unusual. But just calling it out that most of our API calls are not counting against the limit, but the bulk API calls we have as part of the implementation, which again includes tracking, are.
I think this is a big difference between the Commerce Cloud connectors versus the Marketing Cloud connector, right? The Marketing Cloud connector doesn't count, whereas the Commerce does. Something to keep in mind.
Yep, for sure.
Hey, can we have 5 minutes. Should we go through a couple of, I think the multi-org is important. I think we should cover that one slide. And then I think we have a few minutes. We can take some questions as well.
Sure, that sounds great. We'll go fairly quickly through this. Multi-org is a configuration option that's non-reversible inside of Marketing Cloud for the connector. And it allows you to break apart the one enterprise Marketing Cloud account to one CRM Salesforce org. This allows you to split it out and have a business unit, which is a smaller container within the Marketing Cloud enterprise with a subset of users and content and emails. This allows you to connect at the business unit level to a specific Salesforce org. This can be very useful if your customer has a number of different Salesforce orgs, but there are some call outs. Here we don't support multiple integrations with different Salesforce orgs to a single business unit. You would have to use a separate business unit. And then it's non-reversible, as I said. There's some other challenges as well when it comes to establishing the permissions model. You'll just want to make sure that you think through what data gets to which BU, what data is allowed, what users are allowed in each separate instance as well. The things like synchronized data sources in multi-org are configured at the individual business unit level, whereas in the standard implementation, synchronized data sources are configured at the enterprise level, and you'll share certain subsets down to business units through queries at the enterprise level to make sure that the individual business unit users have access to the data they need. So it's a little bit different there. One is a centralized management at the top, and one is at the individual business unit level. The only thing I think I'd like to do, since we've got a very short time, if we could tab forward to the sandbox slide in here. So sandbox testing, multi-org is not a great way to do it. Marketing Cloud doesn't have a great sandbox option. There are some cautions against leveraging multi-org as a sandbox integration. For instance, connecting your one business unit to a production CRM org and one business unit to a sandbox CRM org. The contact IDs are replicated only when it comes to sandbox copies, full copy, partial copies. The caveat here is I talked about the Boolean option for synchronized data sources earlier. The best way to leverage it if you're going to use multi-org and sandboxes is in the sandbox instance to create fields on the objects that you plan to synchronize to Marketing Cloud with some Boolean checkbox that says test data, and then only synchronize data records that are test data to make sure that you're not synchronizing production records from your sandbox into Marketing Cloud, because there are some implications there, broadly speaking, when it comes to contacts and subscribers. I just wanted to call that out because that usually is one thing that folks need to think through.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. All right, so I know we have 3 minutes, Stefan. Definitely we can stick around for a few more minutes if there's questions.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. I have 3 questions for each of you, so let's get through them real quick. And I would like to start with Derek's part because that's still fresh, and then go back to Yumi here for some of the questions in your part. So Derek, a quick question on API calls between the 2 clouds. Is the synchronization of data, whatever it's going to be between service and marketing, is that going to count against the API limits of any of those 2 clouds?
Data sync will not. Synchronized data sources are whitelisted through the connected app authentication.
Right. Okay. So there is going to be calls that will count towards the API limits, but most of them are going to be covered through connected app authentication. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep, that's right. The ones that primarily aren't able to go through that are related to the individual email results, the tracking updates that happen in the back end.
Excellent. On storage, if we moving data between Marketing Cloud, and I think you've alluded to the fact that if you're sending messages through Marketing Cloud, that's going to generate, if you're sending to large volumes, that's going to obviously generate a tremendous amount of data that's being moved between Marketing Cloud and Sales Service Cloud. If we're talking about storage, is there any way that we can anticipate storage and how much storage somebody is actually going to need in Sales and Service Cloud in order to cater for an upcoming Marketing Cloud integration?
Yeah, it's a great question. There has been at various points a calculator online for an estimate there, and I can look around to see if I can still get my hands on one. But we have had a calculator in the past that allows you to do that based on estimated email volumes.
Right. Excellent. Now, one last thing, and I know this is actually going to be a little bigger question, but so just in general, I think that question comes up pretty often. Why in Journey Builder, and specifically in the integration perspective between the 2 clouds, are we actually differentiating between Journey and contact data? What is the reason why we have this kind of Journey data, that the payload that we're attaching to a human that is being injected into a Journey, and then the wider contact data, which is kind of a refreshed data as kind of an actual data set?
Sure. So it's a very important distinction. The main value here is that at time of send, at the time of injection, certain attributes exist, certain values exist for each human. You know that human today. In a month, the human may be different. And that's really what the difference here is. The journey entry data is meant to be that snapshot of what we know when you enter. It's you can also think of it as trust but verify. We're going to trust initially the payload that we have, and we're going to leverage that to personalize and segment the message and pass them through the right journey path. But over time, our ability to count on that journey entry source data, it's great for performance reasons initially. It doesn't require you to do all kinds of other lookups against other system tables. But over time, that data drifts from what we now know as that human, the current state of the human. And so when it comes to contact data later on, sometimes you might want to compare the entry data to the current data. Sometimes you just want to personalize or segment based on the current data to make sure that you're not making drawing stale conclusions from older data.
Makes sense. The last question for you, and probably also something for me here. How would you recommend connecting multiple B2C commerce sites with different brands in Marketing Cloud? So different sites with different business units in Marketing Cloud. Is there any generic recommendation that you can give?
Sure. So there's a big challenge around defining that structure. It can be business unit level. So you can decide whether you want to have separate. It could be by brand. It could be by regions. It could be by other internal organizations as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a brand differentiator. It could be a department as well. It really would depend largely on the customer itself, on the way that their business is structured.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think from a connector perspective, the connector does support site-based integration. So you could have essentially between Commerce Cloud and Marketing Cloud, you can set up based on each site. So if you've got multiple sites, you would set up the appropriate connections between each site into Marketing Cloud. So you can do it from that perspective as well.
Brilliant. Mihir, a couple of questions for you and your part in the beginning. I think the first question that I got was the tracking individual email results in Sales Cloud, not exactly the individual email results that you would get as part of the Marketing Cloud Connect package, but if you send messages from commerce and from B2C commerce, like transactional messaging, do we have any kind of, or does the cartridge feature like a visualization of those messages that are leaving Commerce Cloud so that a service agent can actually review them?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the whole thing that we covered on the last webinar, right? Ultimately, the idea is that if you have all the three clouds, you send an email from Commerce Cloud to that one ID, right? If you use the same same contact ID across commerce, marketing, and service, then when you send that email out from Commerce Cloud, that historical email engagement record is actually being captured for that contact ID in Marketing Cloud, which then will be represented in Service Cloud itself. So when the agent opens up the contact in Service Cloud, they'll be able to see the engagement history in Service Cloud directly. So right. That's kind of the whole piece of the data strategy piece we talked about last time. Then once you connect the clouds we talked about today, it really helps put together that entire 360 view.
Right. A quick question on something that you've mentioned at the beginning of how to synchronize the commerce catalog. I think this was a little bit about whether that catalog is coming from production or staging, and whether that is important or whether that makes a difference, because the catalog URL seems to be different if they're coming from a staging environment rather than if they're coming from a production environment. Is that something that you can point out on that one?
I think, based on the conversations I've had with, and Abraham couldn't make it today because he's at a customer site. Based on the conversations I had with him, essentially what he recommended was the reason why we want to do staging is because the data that isn't going to change frequently, that it makes sense to use staging to replicate that information into Marketing Cloud. Because otherwise, if you're running all of those services and synchronization processes from production to Marketing Cloud, in theory, you're actually taking away resources to do other things from a Commerce Cloud perspective, overall performance, right? So it's more of, typically staging and productions are replicated, and because the data isn't changing frequently, you can just actually leverage the staging data into Marketing Cloud. So hopefully that answers the question.
Just in general, because I had this question for Derek just now. Is there anything that we need to watch out for in terms of connecting Sales Cloud, Service Cloud with Commerce Cloud when specifically looking at limitations as to data that is being moved between systems?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say from Commerce Cloud and Commerce Cloud and Service Cloud for data perspective is don't bring all the order history and everything into Service Cloud. You're going to start to collect a lot of data in Service Cloud, and you may hit storage limits, right? So one of the biggest things to consider as we're looking at cross-cloud and the amount of data commerce marketing creates, you don't want to bring all the data in. You want to have kind of that distributed database of record, so to speak, so that when you want to look at order details, the connector itself already has a Lightning component that will go into Commerce Cloud and give you all the order details. But the order itself, there's an order stub that's created in Service Cloud, and you can use that to just say there is an order placed, and then when you select it, it has a Lightning component that brings the details. So this way, you're not storing all the information in Service Cloud, but you're storing just the core information that's needed to be able to kind of get to the next level of detail via API.
I'd add one more thing to that too, if I could. We've talked a lot about what to replicate inside of Service Cloud and what to replicate from the other clouds, and being mindful of storage limits inside of Service Cloud. It also works in the opposite direction. There may not be governor limits in terms of storage, or it may not be as impactful from a cost standpoint. But it's important to recognize the role that each of the different systems have in the overall solution. The Marketing Cloud, for example, could synchronize all of the records from Service Cloud down to it, including all of the fields and all of that data. But it doesn't really make sense to bring all of that data down, and so you should focus on what is required by the operators in that space to do their job. So marketing would be any data that belongs in Marketing Cloud should be used for personalization or segmentation. You really shouldn't be bringing in data lake type levels of data that's meant for another platform in order to get the performance you expect out of each of the separate systems. So it's just something to consider as part of your discovery, is what data is needed for segmentation, personalization in Marketing Cloud, what data is needed in Service Cloud for service agents to actually be able to do their lookups, their jobs, and what data is available for service agents through external lookups, rather than migrating that data directly in as well.
Makes total sense. Perfect. One last question for Yomi here, and that revolves around the order on behalf of case that you've presented earlier. And while we're speaking about moving data and synchronizing data that makes sense between systems, one question was whether discounts and multiple shipments can be shown in Service Cloud, even with customization, and if that requires customization, how much is the effort, or in general, customizing the data that is being moved between back and forth. If we feel like we need more commerce data in Service Cloud to make that data available to service agents, how much customization does that require?
I don't know the amount of effort required there. That's something I can come back to you guys on.
Okay. Perfect. Excellent, guys. Before we wrap up, I would like to thank you everyone again for taking the time to join us today, especially our awesome presenters, Mihir and Derek. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Watch out for the recordings. Post your questions on the partner community. And for those of you who are watching internally, Salesforce folks, please make your way to Aux62. Make sure that you tune in again for the next webinar in the series, and actually, sadly, the last one in the series, which is going to happen on Thursday. So take care, guys. Thank you so much.